Hello and welcome to this Easter Sunday message with me, Jonny Clark. Ben Stokes, Czech Tiote, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, Jerzy Dudek, Pete Davis, Mark Selby, Tiger Woods, Derek Redmond and Joseph of the Technicolor Dreamcoat fame. All of these have their own incredible tales of famous comebacks. But did any of them come back from the dead? No. And that's just one of the many amazing things about Jesus. Everybody loves a comeback. And Easter Sunday celebrates what has to go down as one of the greatest comebacks of all time. And I've researched a lot of them whilst preparing this. The Gospels tell us that in the days preceding Easter Sunday, Jesus was betrayed, he was arrested, he was beaten, disowned, and finally executed. And throughout all of this, he didn't fight or even argue back. Why? Well, the immediate thing for me that springs to mind is that he knew where this was heading. He knew from Thursday night in the Garden of Gethsemane that this was going to be tough. In Matthew 26, verse 38, Jesus says, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death." Later crying, "Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me." Before concluding, "Yet not as I will, but as you will." Nobody wants to have to make a comeback. You don't plan to go behind. In all of the cases I mentioned at the start, those individuals would never have wanted that to happen. Tiote's Newcastle, 4-0 down at half-time. Redmond's hamstring going halfway through an Olympic semi-final 400-metre race. Ben Stokes was hit in the head amidst England needing their highest run chase in history. Now, obviously the context is completely different. But in all of those situations, you'd be forgiven for giving up. Newcastle could have just rolled over and sought damage limitation. But after 3 other goals, Tiote fired in a famous and incredible volley to draw 4-4 against Arsenal. Derek Redmond could have asked for the stretcher, but he hopped and limped across the finish line to a standing ovation in Barcelona in '92. And Ben Stokes, well, I could talk about Ben Stokes for a long time. Simply put, he played what is widely regarded as the best test match innings of all time. I'll go into a little bit more detail. Why not? For those of you who aren't cricket fans, the Ashes is probably the most important competition to any English or Australian cricketer. A 5-match series was hanging by a thread in 2019 after Australia, who had won and drawn the first 2 matches, looked certain to win the third and retain the trophy. England had been tasked with chasing down a run total of 359 runs, more than they had ever achieved in 140 years of Test cricket. Stokes came in after 3 of his teammates had already got out, still with 218 runs required. And at the start of the final day, he took a blow to the head that meant his helmet had to be replaced. He battered on as the rest of his team crumbled around him, and eventually Australia just needed 1 more wicket to retain the Ashes, which was at least 10 times more likely than England scoring the remaining 73 runs at that point. Stokes then unleashed a barrage of attacking shots through, and the Aussies and the tourists had no answer. And eventually, in one crazy sunny afternoon in Leeds, Ben Stokes orchestrated this most famous of comebacks to keep the Ashes dream alive. Australian legend Ricky Ponting said on commentary, England were down and out. They were buried, but not whilst they had that man. And this is where I come back to Jesus. He was buried. He was killed, and he was left in a tomb. And yet still, he made his comeback. We talk about sporting comebacks because they're incredible, inspirational, tangible stories that give us hope when it all seems lost. But what we often don't think about is the pain and the suffering and the discipline that goes into pulling off such feats. For Stokes, he regularly trains at high intensities designed to replicate match scenarios, putting his body through the pain and discipline so that he knows if he has to produce something extraordinary, he's capable of doing just that. He would obviously rather perform from a position of winning matches comfortably, but he knows he cannot always have his will. Jesus' pain was obvious, but the discipline of seeing through the whole process when he knew what would happen is often overlooked. He wanted his Father to find another way. He didn't want any of it. He could have done something about it at any time, but he stayed true to his plan and he knew where the finish line was. He had to take the beatings, the insults, the accusations and the denials, the embarrassment and the agony of what he went through, because he knew that in his discipline, this would lead to the greatest comeback ever. Today we celebrate that he went through that for us, and as such, he has beaten death itself. And as good as beating Australia is in the Ashes, it's still nothing compared to Jesus beating death for each and every one of us. Easter Sunday is the foundation of our faith. Yes, we'll eat lots of chocolate eggs, and yes, they'll be absolutely ace. But the real reason for Easter is what's behind the egg. And I think Claire and Jenny are going to dip a little bit more into that with an activity of craft a little bit later. So, to conclude my long-winded and presumably incredibly flawed and untheological comparison between Ben Stokes and Jesus, we are all able to make a comeback. We are always able to come back to Jesus. It may take some pain, some suffering, some training and discipline, and I would definitely encourage you to take some time this week to reflect on if there's an area in your life that needs some training and discipline on. But after we've been through all the hard stuff, the celebration when we come back to Jesus and we are one with him is the best there can be. He has won. We have won. Cricket and football competitions will always be played again, but Jesus has won for eternity. He is the champion. He is alive. He is risen indeed. Hallelujah.